There have been a number of media scares in recent times. Cliff Richard, Julian Assange, and others. And we've got to a point where we genuinely, I think, have trial by media. Whether somebody is proven to be guilty or not is a second issue. Their career is seriously impacted by these charges. And there are certain charges which, charges against children, charges against women. These allegations can be career destroying. They may be true, they may be false. That is one issue. The second issue is the role of somebody in the media to be responsible and to be the sort of person who commands respect because they are seen on the media on such a regular basis. Those two things are separate. So I'm very much aware of the damage that can be done by a smear campaign. I'm also very much aware of the damage that can be done by people keeping quiet, the Jimmy Savile situation. So with that in mind, let's have a look at let's have a look first of all at Russell Brand's vigorous denial of anything having taken place. And this is from last night, before the story even broke.
Amidst this litany of astonishing, rather baroque attacks are some very serious allegations that I absolutely refute. These allegations pertain to the time when I was working in the mainstream, when I was in the newspapers all the time, when I was in the movies, and as I've written about extensively in my books, I was very, very promiscuous. Now, during that time of promiscuity, the relationships I had were absolutely always consensual. I was always transparent about that then, almost too transparent. And I'm being transparent about it now as well. And to see that transparency metastasized into something criminal that I absolutely deny makes me question, is there another agenda at play?
The current story about Russell Brand apparently is one of a number that are coming out. And I'd like to address a comment made by Dino Goldie 9716. And Dino says, "Why do you keep lumping Hugh Edwards in with Schofield, Wotton and now Brand? The police confirm that Hugh Edwards did not do anything criminal. The supposed victim of Hugh Edwards said it was a non-story. In marked contrast, what Schofield did was at the very least unprofessional and possibly predatory. The allegations surrounding Dan Wotton are of a criminal nature. There's no comparison." Well, as far as I know, Dan Wotton has not been arrested, and a criminal investigation has not begun. As far as I know, Schofield has not been arrested, and a criminal investigation has not begun. And a criminal investigation has definitely not begun into Hugh Edwards' case. All three have acted in a way that raises questions, allegedly, or have acted allegedly in a way that raises questions about their professional responsibility and their professional profile. And that is the first issue. So the question about whether or not they've done something criminal is a second issue to whether or not they've done something that seriously damages their reputation and hurts other people. And I think that's the issue. So the issue about criminality is for the police to pursue. And the issue about the reputation of their brand, the television companies that have employed them and so on, that is the question that I hope I'm pursuing. There's a distinction between the two. And when it comes to Hugh Edwards, I suggested a while ago that although there seem to be explanations and although he has serious mental health problems, can you imagine Hugh Edwards announcing the death of the Queen at 6 o'clock, and then at 7 o'clock, photographs of him in his underwear appearing on the same screen. No, you can't. And that is the test, really. Can you put this story next to that story? And I think it means it is impossible for Hugh Edwards to come back to that level of viewer confidence. I don't think the television viewers would trust him with the big stories anymore, even if he were to come back as a news anchor. That's number one. Philip Schofield, his brand is completely damaged. And although he tried, I gather, to find a new lease of life through Vanessa Feltz on Talk TV or GB News, that wasn't going to go anywhere. And in fact, a few days before that story turned up in the Sunday newspapers, it had already been poo-pooed in weekly newspapers. As for Dan Wootton, he seems to be brazening it out. He's been pulled from the Mail Online, but he still continues on GB News. Well, that's GB News' decision. I think every time one sees Dan Wootton on GB News, if one chooses to watch GB News, it will be very difficult not to think of the various allegations against him. And some of those allegations, as you pointed out, are criminal in nature. But, as I think I've just pointed out, the police have not done anything. So either there isn't enough evidence, or, well, what can we say? Or there is something else going on. And it's against that background of toppling the mighty icons of our public entertainment that we find Russell Brand. Now again, Russell Brand has strenuously denied any wrongdoing. Strenuously. And it would be inappropriate to suggest that he has committed all these, again, crimes, I think, that are alleged in the Times report today, which was published at 3:00. We may hear more information. There may be more damning information in the Dispatches programme or in the Sunday Times tomorrow. I will let you know. I was slightly shocked when somebody on the comments section suggested that I was a protector. I'm not protecting Russell Brand. I'm not protecting anybody. I'm being very careful with the words that I choose, and I made it very clear that our first concern should be for the victims. And among those victims may well be Russell Brand. We know how eagerly the media leapt in to attack Cliff Richard. Like vultures. You remember that wonderful scene in Zorba the Greek where the old ladies gather around the bed of the Frenchwoman and start going through her clothes and her belongings, although she hasn't yet died. And she comes to and is horrified. Well, I'm afraid there is that element about social media and about media in general, plucking at the seeds of a story like vultures. But at the same time, a story is there and it should be looked at, because if one person doesn't look at it, another person will. And I think popular culture is one of the ways in which we can measure the health of our nation. Our nation is in a very, very bad way. And so we shouldn't be greatly surprised that what we're getting is very scurrilous gossip from popular culture and a sort of obsession with bringing people down. Now, in the case of Russell Brand, the stories which are being alleged have criminal elements to them. And they're very shocking. I think also the fact that there is a reputation that goes before them. And I suppose there's a sort of bad boy reputation which is questionable and has been tolerated for some time. You know, there is a price to pay for all that. I hope that the people who feel victimized can find some sort of satisfaction and refuge. But I also hope that their experience has been misconstrued. I hope that Russell Brand is not as guilty as he appears, and as is alleged. I hope this is a missed story, but there is so much clamour about it. I think it's very difficult to dismiss this as insignificant. And as I say, I believe there's more to come, and I believe there are other people waiting to be named. And I think tomorrow will be a worrying day. I think it's a great shock to see people you admire toppled, and there is nothing our modern media likes more, I think, than to discover feet of clay. But at the same time, as I've said all along, public celebrity comes with public responsibility, and that public responsibility goes into private life as well. And this goes all the way back to Hollywood and before. And in the past, film directors, TV people have managed to control the image of their wayward stars. It's much harder to do that with social media and in an age where there are cameras everywhere. It's much harder to do that in an age when people feel empowered. But if you listen to the stories or read the stories in the Times, these people who are alleging dreadful behaviour by Russell Brand are also saying how much they felt intimidated and how hard it was to come forward. They only came forward because the journalists tracked them down. They only spoke because they felt safe in a crowd. And that, I think, tells us something as well. It tells us a lot about the control and about the fear that is inherent in this sort of abusive power. If it's true. If it's not true, this is a terrifying assault on one individual who is simply being attacked because he is in the public eye. And it's important, if that is the case also, that the information is out there and that people know what is being said. I think this is probably one of the most important stories in the in this summer. I think it's more important than the Hugh Edwards story, than the Philip Schofield story, and certainly significantly more important than the Dan Wootton story. Why? Because Brand is such a star and Dan Wootton is a nobody. But what happened to the people who Dan Wootton pursued, if that is true, is simply contemptible and horrific.